Well, hi and welcome to this week's vlog. Just going to catch you up on the Feeder Masters campaign from the weekend, which was on the mighty River Yare. Now, I absolutely and utterly love the River Yare. I was born in Norwich. I grew up in Norwich till I was about 21 years old, and I fished a lot of times in the evenings and matches in and around that system. So I really do like the place. I don't get a chance to go there very often. In the last 15 years, I've probably only been a dozen or so times. So it always is nice to go back there. I went with Matt Godfrey, who's a great friend of mine and a brilliant angler. And it's nice to go with someone like Matt because when you're travelling there, you're brainstorming ideas all the time. You're thinking how you can do things a little bit better. So it was really nice for someone who doesn't know the venue to come and add some ideas. He'd been once before for a festival, so that was nice to be there with him. Now, the match on the Saturday was an open match, just a small one, a 90 pegger. You know, don't get many 90 peg open matches these days. But I only took my feeder rods. I always used to love pole fishing when I was down on the Yare, but I realised that Feeder Masters was on the Sunday. I needed to fish the feeder on the Saturday, choose what, even if it meant sacrificing possibly a decent pole peg, because I wanted to get the best from it for the Sunday's match. As you probably know, watching the vlog, Feeder Masters campaign's been very good, just not quite as good as I would like in terms of qualifying. So I was really keen to sort of try and get a good result this weekend. Now, on the Saturday, I drew peg 124, which is an area where it's on sort of, I'm going to call it like a slight outside of a bend, but it's really interesting because it's an outside of a bend in one direction, but an inside of a bend in the other. So what that means is on the River Yare, it's tidal, and you get about 6 hours of movement one way and 6 hours of movement the other, with a little probably 45 minutes in between if it stood still. And for those 6 hours when it floods in, my peg's very quick on the inside, which means over time it's been sort of worn away and it's quite deep. Whereas on the ebb tide, when the water's getting lower, the peg is actually quite steady in pace. Now, I know that that means generally it's quite good for roach, you know, in that area close in. So plan number one was a short feeder line for roach. Went with the 11-foot Monster X, which is, you know, a really nice rod for that because it's got a bit of strength. You've got to bear in mind you're going to be casting 30 grams or more in your feeder. So you don't want a really soft rod that's just going to fold over. You want a rod that's going to put a nice little steady bend in your, you know, in things. So that 15 metre line was something to think about. And then I was going to use a 12-6 Superior 50 gram at about 40 metres, which I felt when it was ebbing was going to be in the main body of the flow. So I had to sort of think about if I wanted to fish for skimmers fishing out there. There's a tinge of colour in the river, not loads, but a little bit of colour. Usually all right for roach fishing, and I know that the bream haven't quite been having a chew at the moment. So I was sort of aware of the fact that if there wasn't some skimmers showing early, I was going to get my head down fishing for roach. So on the whistle, started at 40 metres. Now, quite interesting really in the mix that I used on the Yare this weekend. I really want something that's going to be nice and soft. So we've got a new ground bait at Sony Baits called Black Roach. It's really hempy. It's a fantastic ground bait for river fishing. Really is very good. I wanted it to be a bit softer, so I put some toasty brown crumb in, which is quite coarse brown crumb, which means the two together, even if I wetted them up quite a lot, they come out of the feeder quickly, which I think is really important. You don't want a mix that gets wet, because it's going to get wet with the baits you're introducing, that just then stodges in the feeder. It's got to sort of almost stodge in and then melt enough to come out when you pick up on a fish. So you have to think about that. So that mix was bang on for me, roughly 50-50, possibly a little bit less in the brown crumb. Then added to that some hemp, just a couple of tins of hemp. I just whacked a couple of tins in when I was mixing it up, so a few bits break up and most of it stays intact, but you've got quite a bit of hemp in that mix. Mix it slightly dry because I'm probably going to add some baits like chop worms. I'm going to add probably some bit of corn and maybe some casters as well. I'm not a massive fan of piling loads of casters in on the river. Tend to find it sort of makes a fish a bit crazy really, and you miss a few bites. So just went with a few worms and a little bit of chopped corn because I like putting a piece of corn on the hook now and then for a slightly bigger one. And started with that mix, even though it's hempy, started with that mix for skimmers across. There was immediately obvious to me there was no skimmers feeding. I was getting taps on the tip. You sort of chuck your tip out and it bends round as it tightens up, and then it'll rattle and ping back, and you just catch a little roach or miss a bite. And I thought, this is no good. I need to sort of work on this a bit more. So came in close, went with a 4 square wire cage and just cast regularly. And I do mean regularly. I'm talking like never waited more than 2 minutes. Casting regularly, building a peg, getting bites on the drop. I used a 16 N30 hook, which isn't a massive hook. It's just a nicely balanced hook. And caster was probably my best bait. Really weird that, because maggot gets a bite quicker. Missed a lot of bites on maggot. Put a caster on, it seemed like you waited a tiny bit longer, but they got it in the mouth properly. I think those little fish couldn't quite break the caster, which meant it was good. Worm was okay, but I almost felt it was a bit big for the fish I was fishing for. Caster seemed really nice. And I caught a lot of fish, caught about 160 fish. Didn't miss too many bites, which I was happy about. I just used the normal sliding feeder rig that we all use in international style fishing. I fished it internationally, if you like. I did have a slightly longer hook length than 50 centimetres. About 70 centimetres I found was better. Just gave my bait a little bit more time to fall to get a bite and put a nice catch together. It really was. I really enjoyed it. I weighed 16 pounds 6 ounces, which was pretty good in my section, if I'm being honest, and it was 5th overall in the match. There was an 18 pound on the pole, the end peg and the next peg in, right down the other end in the 60s, had 20 pounder skimmers and 17 pounder skimmers, and Will Freeman was the first peg the other side of a gap where I was, on 138, and he's had 18 pounder roach on a short feeder. So some nice catches there. That led me nicely into Sunday. But when I got back that night, I was chatting to Matt, and Matt had been in the 80s, which is a very poor area, and he'd caught 713, which was really good from where he'd been. They'd literally caught nothing, but you needed 10, 11 pounds to win a section there, be it pole or an odd skimmer. So we had a little chat, and we both sort of decided that even though that short line was okay there, we'd probably be better off fishing a little bit further. Bit slower, but hopefully a few more better quality fish, and you'd keep bites coming all day, because that area isn't as deep close in. It's relatively straight, which means the depth is a bit further out. So for me, that meant fishing in that sort of middle-ish channel, and Matt totally agreed. He said if he'd have done that all day, he probably would have had a bit more. So that was really interesting and some great info, because the next day I drew peg 91 just down from that. Again, excuse me, I didn't expect it to be a strong area. I really did feel like I was going to be up against it, if I'm being honest, because there was an end peg with a peg free next to that angler, and on my right was Will Freeman, who, not to bull him up too much, is the man on that river with a feeder. He is absolutely fantastic. To be honest, he's brilliant anyway, but on that particular venue, he is absolutely phenomenal. So I knew I had my work cut out there. It looked to me as we got started, Will was fishing short, and he got into a fantastic lead, a good 20 or 30 fish ahead of me, and I was starting to regret my decision to fish down the middle, because bites were slow in coming. But as the flow picked up and as the level dropped, I got a lot more bites, and Will ran out of bites. So, excuse me, I was fishing down the middle on that 12.6 Superior, a little bit longer rod. I was fishing 6 pound mono straight through. I always fish mono on the river, and it was a case of cast it out, follow my rod down, and hopefully get a bite within the first minute or 90 seconds. I wasn't rushing. When you're fishing 28 metres, steady away. Caught a slightly better stamper fish than the day before, and finished the match with around about 100 fish. Very similar to Will when I looked at his catch shot. I think we've had a similar number of fish, but I think I had a definite run of slightly better fish, although Will did have a few big ones in there as well. His match seemed to peter out until he moved out later on. We knew it was going to be close. When everybody weighed in, there was some good weights, 11, 12 pound, and me and Will had a really close battle. I just nicked it with 17-1, and Will's had 15-10. So I was really, really pleased. You know, he'd helped me a lot of information, so it was sort of bittersweet really, because I do really rate him and his information that we discussed. So it was a good match to be in, but I felt that really, you know, that decision to fish a bit further out has just made the difference for me, and I managed to put those fish in the net. I absolutely loved it. What 2 days fishing. 16 pound and 17 pound of roach on a feeder, on a river. It doesn't get any better than that for me. I love river fishing. That challenge of moving water is absolutely fantastic. And that was brilliant, and it really made me buzzing because I qualified for the Feeder Masters final, you know, down at Tamar. I've been seeing it and really wanted to get there. There's some fantastic anglers there, but wow, what a competition that is. And I know that that is going to be an incredible final at a big natural venue that is proving one of the best venues in the country at the moment. So I'm really, really excited for that down in September. The challenge now, well, we are going to Ferry Meadows this weekend for the third round of the Super League. Ferry Meadows is a very iconic bream venue, but it's proving very challenging this year. The fish haven't settled for whatever reason. It's going to be really tough. A bream will be mega. So we'll catch up next week. We'll see what tactics we ended up using and if we managed to catch that elusive bream. We really, really want to do well, my Preston Innovations team, in that Super League. We're lying in fourth. This weekend for me is do or die, because you could have a big blowout or a fantastic score. Let's see where it's going to be. Maybe even something in the middle. We'll find out. Catch up with you next week. Hope you enjoyed this week's vlog, and I'll see you soon.